In his horned helmet, fur pelts, and face paint, Jacob Chansley became known as the QAnon shaman.
The QAnon shaman.
The QAnon shaman.
The QAnon shaman.
In a hat.
The public face of the Capitol riot.
Public face of the insurrection.
The face of the insurrection.
The most prominent symbol of a violent insurrection that attempted to overthrow the United States government.
Chansley stormed the building with his face painted while wearing a fur helmet and horns.
Who stormed the Capitol on January 6th.
Who stormed the Capitol.
Stormed the Capitol on Insurrection Day.
Compared to many of the defendants in federal court, this is an exceptionally bad dude.
The amazing thing about the whole thing is watching the video, and on the Senate floor, there's a cop who's armed, and a guy bursts in, the QAnon shaman, dressed like a Viking, and he basically talks to him. I'm watching. Shoot him. Yeah. Shoot him. Like, you burst into the United States, if he was dressed like bin Laden, would you have shot him?
Shoot him. That man is called Steve Schmidt. He's a longtime political flack. He spent years being paid to lie for John McCain. He's now being paid by Democratic donors and oligarchs to lie on behalf of the Biden administration in permanent Washington. But that sentiment, the one he just expressed in the tape, is absolutely real. Shoot him. Now, if he'll encourage the murder of Jacob Chansley, why wouldn't he do the same to you? Well, of course, he absolutely would. And it's worth, as you think about that, to consider what Jacob Chansley actually did. He was not committing insurrection. He was not armed. He was in no sense violent. But don't take our word for it. Here's some of the tape. Watch.
Let's go. Let's go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Thank you, officers. God bless you guys. Thank you for your patience. We really appreciate it.
God bless you guys. Thank you for your patience. We really appreciate it. God bless the men in blue. That's what Jacob Chansley said. And for that, Steve Schmidt, who gets paid by oligarchs to lie, thinks he should be murdered. It's worth, we thought, talking to Jacob Chansley himself, the man at the center of this story, the man whose life has been destroyed by liars like Steve Schmidt. Where is he now? What's he doing? And what does he think of what happened to him? Jacob Chansley joins us now. Jacob Chansley, thanks so much for coming on. So you, I think,
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course. You knew, of course, that you were led into the chamber by law enforcement and that you prayed for them once you were inside. What was it like hearing people like Steve Schmidt call for your murder, knowing what you did about what actually happened?
Well, for me, given that I understand now especially that January 6th was a deep state setup and a deep state psyop that ensued afterward, I'm not surprised. That's what these people do. The whole media apparatus, what I call the mockingbird media, and the government are in lockstep.
But how frustrating was it? I mean, you may have been in prison when he went on Bill Maher and said that you should be shot to death for being led into the Senate chamber. But how frustrating was it to hear that he and so many other people saying the same thing on behalf of the government when you knew it was all a complete lie?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, because I understand the depths of government corruption and the mockingbird media's corruption, it was par for the course. And I didn't take it personally because I knew that all they'd done is dehumanize me. But this is what the propaganda in the mockingbird media does, is they dehumanize people, they caricaturize people to fit their narrative. And that's PSYOP 101, Tucker.
Yeah, but these are human beings, and you're an American citizen and a veteran, and you did nothing wrong. So, I mean, you don't sound frustrated by it. Perhaps you've reached a Zen level of acceptance. I don't know. But it's a little shocking, isn't it?
Well, not when you understand what the deep state is and how they operate. So with that said, if you like, I'd like to bolster what it is that I said when I say that the January 6 events was a deep state setup and a deep state psyop by describing what the deep state is in about 2 minutes, if that's okay.
Well, I hope you will.
Okay. So The Founding Fathers described or characterized tyranny as the consolidation of all three branches of government into a centralized power: executive, legislative, and judicial. Now, when we talk about the deep state, what we're talking about is a tyrannical government. But the deep state is comprised of three aspects. Number one, the first aspect is the circumventing of the checks and balances portions of our three-branch government system. If you corrupt the checks and balances portions, you don't need to corrupt the whole system, just the checks and balances that keep the centralization of power from happening. Right. So this is done through blackmail, bribery, lobbying, etc. Now, the other aspect to the deep state, the second aspect, is the bureaucracy. Now, the bureaucracy is comprised of over 500 federal regulatory agencies that are charged with regulating commerce. Now, these bureaucratic agencies are, in effect, writing law by writing the regulations that tell us what we can buy, what we can sell, what is legal and what is illegal. So that's legislative. They also have their own regulation enforcement agents that enforce their regulations on the American people. So that's executive. And they have their own administrative courts that are outside of the federal court system. So that's judicial. So that's tyranny. And now the third aspect of the deep state is the international corporations and the international banking cartels that have either blackmailed our congressmen or bureaucrats into submission, or they, through bribery and lobbying, they have written the regulations for the bureaucracy to then enforce. So then in this sense, the international corporations and banking cartels are using the government's monopoly on the initiation of force to reinforce their monopolies over our resources, our labor, and our currency. And they are using the government's monopoly on the initiation of force to take our tax dollars, public money, and put it into the private hands of less than 1% of the population. Now, that being said, they use psyops to ensure that we're fighting amongst each other and we don't understand or agree upon how it is that this tyrannical government has taken over the country and is forcing our compliance.
Now, I'm sorry. I have to say, I was told you were crazy. And because you wore Viking horns, I thought maybe you were crazy. But I spent my life in Washington, and I don't know what you're going to say next, but what you just said is true. That is absolutely true. That's not crazy. By the way, you described it really well. I've seen it firsthand, and I'm just kind of amazed. I'm not being patronizing. I'm just being sincere. That's not crazy at all, what you just said.
Well, thank you. And no, what's crazy is trusting these bureaucrats and these congressmen, what I call the dinosaurs and the dinosaur circus of D.C., trusting them to fix all the problems that they've created over the last several decades. That's crazy. Now, let's talk about January 6th in light of what the deep state is and how it was a deep state setup. So we have Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell stripping Chief Sund of his powers, his emergency powers to put the National Guard there.
That would be the head of the Capitol Police.
Yogananda Pittman. Yes, Chief Sund. You did the interview with him, which was beautiful, by the way, where he basically said that he was stripped of his emergency powers by Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell because they changed the law before January 6th, just so conveniently. And then Yogananda Pittman, according to former Capitol Police Lieutenant Tarek Johnson, she didn't get any of the information that was being given to her from the FBI, the CIA, and the Pentagon to Chief Sund. So here we are. We have the checks and balances portions of our government corrupted, whether that be Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, or Yogananda Pittman, the intelligence officer in the Capitol. So that's the checks and balances, or that's also the bureaucracy. We have CIA, FBI, and the Pentagon not telling Chief Sund what they believed was going to happen on that day. So here it is, the weaponization of information, the non-use of information to ensure that something like January 6th could take place. And we both know there was federal agents in the crowd. We both know Antifa and BLM were instigating the crowd. We both know that Capitol Police were set up. We both know that Nancy Pelosi and Yogananda Pittman sat on their hands while the building was attacked, and Tarek Johnson was trying to evacuate the Senate and the House, and nothing happened. He actually evacuated the Senate because he didn't get the orders because he knew it was the right thing to do. And the whole reason Ashley Babbitt got shot was because Yogananda Pittman refused to acknowledge and evacuate evacuate the House of Representatives like Tarek Johnson evacuated the Senate. And so because there was people in the House of Representatives, the police officer used deadly force against Ashley Babbitt.
Once again, I want to stop you and say I'm looking for the crazy. I'm not hearing it at all. Did you, just to pause, and I don't want to interrupt your narrative for too long, but did you have these views when you showed up to protest the 2020 election on January 6th? I mean, did you understand how the government worked at that point?
Yes, very much so.